Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner Podcast. I'm Dillon. I'm your host, joined by my blue collar badass, Matt. What's going on, man?
Hey, Dillon, man. It's almost the end of the week. It is bitter cold here in Michigan again. We went from being almost into springtime to now we're right back into the frozen tundra. But I think it's only supposed to last a couple days. But other than that, things are good, man. Just been running around this week.
Yeah, it's like last week finishing 75 hard and then doing it with 4x4x48. I think every run that I did past 4 p.m. or whatever, it was like 35 degrees. So getting up at midnight and 4 a.m. out of a nice toasty bed to go into putting on sweats and a long sleeve to go run 4 miles or walk 4 miles in the dark was not pleasant. But
that is some serious commitment, my friend. I don't think I could do it. I don't know how you do it.
This one was a lot easier if Lauren. So if my wife was here, she went and hiked the Trans Catalina Trail last week. If she was here, getting up at 4 a.m. multiple nights or midnight, 4 a.m. like there would have been hell to be had. So just waking the dogs up was no problem.
Now, did you bring the dogs with you on all of them?
They went on the first couple, but I mean, they rile each other up. So I've got 2 shepherds, right? An Australian and a German, and they rile each other up. So and especially like at 4 a.m, like I'm just getting through like these runs, right? To then have them. I mean, they sit in like the window and waiting for me to come back, but
yeah,
to start out, or to deal with them and just mentally trying to get through these, not going to happen.
Well, congrats on finishing that up. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, man. I mean, likewise for phase 1, that's as mentally challenging as it gets for sure to do that for 30 days.
It was tough. But again, like we mentioned with Luke last week, it teaches you so quickly how much time you waste and how you really have an abundance of time. It's just we put ourselves in these little prisons by doing all the dumb shit we do, and it's a constant wasting of time. You find out real fast.
So I was on another podcast this morning, and one of the things that I brought up in there, again, in construction podcasts will be out in a couple of weeks, but is so often in construction and really just in our normal lives, we're not focused on results, right? We're focused on like being busy or some other crappy metric where, with 75 hard, with phase 1, with 4x4x48, it's like, okay, I need to do this, this, and this. You do the list, right? And that's all there is to it. And so often we get caught up in busy work and just crummy other things that have no metrics, that aren't valuable, where if we just focus on results or on getting things done, knocking stuff off a list, it's amazing what happens, right? You get it done.
You just break it down into checking boxes. It's really quite easy. And I was listening to John Paramore this morning in an interview, and he was screaming and ranting and raving in his typical fashion about how pissed off he gets when he hears people say, "Oh, I'm so busy." And his response when people asking him, how are things going, is, "I'm so effing productive." And that it's like, yes, that's awesome. I might start using that now myself.
It's to tell the truth, right? So often we're wandering generalities and not specific things. So one of the other like big things in construction that you often deal with is like, well, how's this project going? And you get some BS answer, right? Like it's good, bad, terrible. And it's like, especially when you good, okay, fine, whatever. Terrible. Well, what do you mean? Well, this one thing in this one room on this one project for one day was, it went bad. But, then you look at the rest of the project, it's fine, right? No problem. So the one thing is this guy is just stuck on this room or this guy that made him mad for 10 minutes on one day, not, like the rest of the project, right? The vast majority, 99.999% is totally good. You're just stuck on 10 minutes of crap.
I see that almost every day on job sites. And honestly, it gets so exhausting, right? Because the world is not always ending in construction. There's nothing that ever goes 100% according to plan, right? It just doesn't happen. It's the real world. You're dealing with humans and things happen, but it is so very few and far between when it really is an end of the world type horrible situation. But so many people just blow it out of proportion, and just hearing that, it just taxes you.
And I think this is, for all you guys out there, right? For anybody leading a team, or even, heck, I don't care where you are on that job site, right? Or you're on that design team or whatever. Be specific. Ask for specifics. Well, what is bad? Well, why is that? Right? You ask a couple why questions, dig down a little deeper, and you're going to see like, oh, okay, well, do this and it's fixed, right? It ends up being so much easier, but you got to get past the level of bullshit to like, what is the real problem?
Definitely. And it's easy to do. Let me rephrase that. It's simple to do. It's not easy. It's real easy just to spit out, it sucks. Everything's horrible, or, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. We just got to dial in a little bit farther. And, there's a lot of good stuff that happens on these sites all day long that no one ever talks about.
Yeah. And I mean, so to go back a little bit to our episode with Mari, where she was learning and growing, and that's how she's been able to get to where she is today, right? So but she had the right mindset going into it. And that's really what this comes down to, is what is your mindset? Are you in a positive frame of mind where like, oh, this is cool, interesting, right? I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to do different things. Or are you in a like Eeyore mood, right? Are you a ho-hum kind of person that doesn't want to do anything?
There's two things there. Mari, yeah, she has an awesome story, and just the confidence to just go up on a roof, in her case, and just start asking questions and just learn and show a general appreciation and a general interest in what these other folks are doing on their day-to-day tasks. It's so huge for you, and you can learn so much. The other one, you brought up Eeyore. Just as a side note, my son, my 11-year-old, was moping around the other day, and I made that reference to him. I said, stop acting like Eeyore, man. Nothing is that bad. And he looked at me like I was 90 years old, had no clue who the mopey donkey or whatever it was.
Yeah. And then, I mean, it's Eeyore and Tigger, right? Like, are you jumping around and,
Yep.
Going crazy, or are you, just sad and mopey, right? And I mean, we all know those people, but it's the easiest reference to give. And I don't, there might be some other show that has that, but I mean, that's what I grew up with, right? And it's Winnie the Pooh. You just, it's a very simple reference, and most people get it.
For sure. But yeah, kind of recapping on Mari, since we started with her episode here. The willingness to learn and the willingness to meet people and to know and learn new people too is huge, because I think we've touched on relationships and how important relationships are in our collective industry. We probably touch on it every episode. But to hear her story and how she came here to America, and, she wasn't a roofer, right? But she fell in love with the industry for whatever reason. It sparked her interest, and now she's up on roofs taking pictures of geese, making nests up on big roofs in downtown Chicago. And, you learn, you grow, you build relationships, and that's where it all starts.
One of the key points in there is, in building relationships, you've got to give something, right? And so often in construction, we're looking for somebody to give us something first, right? We're not the first ones to the plate. And in building those relationships, if you want more good things in your life, you need to give more good things. It's a flow, right? So if you're flowing more good things to more people, more good things are going to come back. It might sound a little woo-woo, it might sound a little out there, but I mean, you just see the people on your job sites, the companies that exude that positive energy. They're not looking for the next hype thing. They're not looking to ride a trend. They're just genuinely good people. And so often in construction, especially, you see that those companies, they get more work, right? they do good things. They provide great services. They do volunteer work. They're active in the communities. All those things, right? Because construction is a very local thing, right? You know, the firms that are local, the firms that are doing stuff in your community. That's what you care about, right? The ones that are sponsoring basketball or giving to the community in some way, shape, or form. Because they give, they get, right? They get in the form of projects, they get in the form of relationships, referrals. But we can't be so tight. We can't be so tight knit of not giving, not contributing, not sharing the knowledge, the things that we've learned. All that's, I mean, exactly what we're doing here, right? Is to share, to give. And you guys can do that in your own way, right? Whether that's in your communities, on LinkedIn, on whatever, but is to create those flows of giving, of positivity, of good-natured humanness, right? And you'll be amazed on what you get back. I know for me, it's been tremendous in my life. Just the view that I have on so much. So, I mean, and Margaret's seen it in her life, right? You've seen it in yours. It works.
It does, and it spreads kind of. I won't use the term I was going to use. It spreads and it's contagious, right? The enthusiasm is contagious, and it helps with retention of employees. It helps with retention of clients and repeat clients. You know, it's all about building that community. You know, and that's where it starts is building the community, because we're all here, like you just said. It's all fairly local, at least on the scale that I work on. It certainly is local, but you know, we run into the same folks. I compete against the same companies. I see the same guys on jobs to jobs. You know, we're all in this together to some degree. We actually started. We don't do it probably often enough at Schaefer, but we started kind of marketing other firms' projects as a tactic on social media, and it wasn't that weird of a thing. And the one time the first time I did it, rather, it was a cool project. You know, we had a competitor who, by right, you know, I would have rather built the project myself. They were building the fire station, and it was a cool project. It's got intrinsic value to the local community. You know, it's honoring our first responders and those men and women that put it all on the line. So we put it out there as, hey, this is a cool project. I didn't even know the name of the contractor at the time, or I didn't want to put it on my social media but we put it out there, and it just is a small example of how I think we can all kind of help to build that community, because there's enough work to go around. There always will be. You know, the economy ebbs and flows, but construction, it finds a way to keep on moving regardless of if times are good or bad. So, you know, there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of innovation, especially that we can look at and to just help kind of keeping that close-knit community and growing and expanding on what we can all do together.
And to your point, in like especially public works projects, right? Especially in civic stuff for fire stations, police stations, schools, you know, even hospitals to an extent, right? Like all these things are community places, right? Mm-hmm. You hope you never have to go to the police station, but if you do, if it's nice, right, that's great. You know, you want your fire stations to be nice so that your firefighters are, you know, well taken care of, so they can come and deal with your house or business if that ever happens on the worst day of your life, right? Like you want them to be taken care of, and same with hospitals, right? You want a good flow so you get seen faster if you, again, on the worst days of your life, you know, to go to those places. It could be the happiest, right, if you're having a kid. But for this, like, we need to praise, to show, to be happy for these things. Same with airports, right? Like, and your company might not even do airport work, but if you're mad about like not getting an airport project, which you probably couldn't handle anyway, right? Like, you be happy about the thing, or admire the architecture or the craftsmanship or the build quality within those projects. And then that just, again, it perpetuates a good cycle forward, right? Like, oh, we could incorporate this thing on our next project, right? They did a great job here. Let's use this for design inspiration for this next thing. Or like, oh, that's a beautifully like welded or crafted thing. I wonder how they did it. And have those conversations. And it's to never kind of put down, unless it's just like a terrible project, right? Like it's just horribly built, or like has a lot of problems, but it's like, okay, what did they do that we can learn from to not do this, right? What did they do that we can improve from? But it's always a growth and a improvement. It's an innovation process, not a like looking down upon another project.
Totally. And it's not a lack of competition either. So I want to make that real clear here that, you know, I have that 100 to 0 mentality, that mindset. It's one of our core values. We'll get scrappy as hell when we need to. And there's a time and place for that. It's after that. And when the dust all settles, that, you know, going back to your main point there, that's when we can learn. That's when we can pick up things and, you know, boost each other up a little bit too. You know, we talk a lot about making the trades cool again, about, you know, different career choices in our industry. And, you know, some of that old school cutthroat mentality is probably a little bit to blame with some of the mindsets folks have on careers in construction right these days.
Dude, you're reading my mind here. I talked about this on the other podcast I was on this morning, and it's the older generation always saw people as expendable, right? That if you didn't perform, if you didn't do your work, we'll find somebody else. We'll find somebody to replace you, right? There's a ton of people coming in construction. Again, this was 20, 30 years ago, and there was always someone else to fill the pipeline. The pipeline was always bringing people into the trades. In the last 10 years, 15 years, you know, that has not been the case at all, right? So from like, my graduating class of 50 engineers, electrical engineers, I was the only one to go into like building, design, and construction kind of straight out of school, or at least into that side of it. Another person came in after, but that's it. Like that was the only thing out of 50. And then a couple went into industry, and, you know, there's 5 of us, right? So 10% went into like manufacturing. The rest went into like other stuff, right? Whether that's electronics, technical sales, field engineer, whatever. But into manufacturing, there was 5 that I could think of off the top of my head, you know, and then like 2 that went into the AEC industry. So today, when you talk about like the old school mentality, is there's not people to fill those seats, right? And then the people that leave construction, and this goes for across the board, from the trades, from whatever, they're not coming back, right? The people that leave construction just are not coming back. They're not even coming back in a parallel track. They left, right? There's going to be a few that go to be like from design to like vendors, or, you know, like I came to a parallel to come back and help the industry, but very few do that, right? If they leave, they leave. And how many like do you see in for trades, right? They were working a trades job and then left to do, they're going to do something else. And whatever that something else is, I mean, they're not coming back. They're just not. So it's to have that culture to value your people, to understand like you need to treat them well. Because if you lose somebody, now if they're not a fit, they're not a fit. We're not saying that. But for the people that want to be there, that have an interest in the trades, you know, you got to treat your people well so that they can, you know, continue to be there and perform.
Absolutely. And I mean, we could probably do a whole show on hiring and how abysmal the labor market is right now. And maybe we will on a future date, but you nailed it. If it's core values first, for me anyways, for Schaefer Construction, that's it. If you fit our core values, you can fit in our team. If you don't, you don't. If you egregiously break one of them, one strike, you're out, and we don't think twice about it. But when you find those people that mesh and that fit those values, you want to do everything you can to see them succeed and to help them down that path of getting where they want to go, whether it's whatever their role is and whatever they want to get to. It doesn't really matter. But, as an owner, it's our job to help and to keep that path moving for them, because you're right. It's horrible when you lose a good employee. That sucks, man. And it takes a long time to recover from it.
And most people don't value their team members enough. They're in this replacement mindset. And the more that we can value, everybody across the board, the better off we're going to be. And, we've talked about it in so many episodes, but it's, Zach hit on it, right? And his team and building his team up, that, there are 20 people, right? 25 people that want to be great welders, right? And he's attracting a ton of people into a trade and doing specialty welding, right? It's a very niche thing that's just, he's killing it on. And that's, you can attract people in all areas, all avenues. And then it's just to understand that, like, hey, this is possible. You can do this. You can be great at it, no matter how small the niche, right, of specialty metal welding.
And what I loved about having Zach on was his absolute fight against mediocrity. Like, that guy, probably above anyone else I've ever met to date, is leading the charge to absolutely just destroy mediocrity, cut its throat, throw it in the dumpster, get it out of here for good. And we even had people kind of poking back on that episode on some of the comments, the live comments, about just that fact. But look, the reality is, if we all started acting like that and stop accepting subpar performance and subpar effort, industry as a whole would be much more productive. We'd all be more efficient. We'd probably be having a hell of a lot more fun on a regular basis. There's definitely something to it. And he really kind of hit that home for me when we talked with him.
And it's that 100-0 mindset, right? But it's 100-0 against your own performance, right? It's not taking into account anyone else's, it's your own. And can you run the score up against yourself and play your game?
Yeah, and you have to. You got to do it every day, all day long. You should be constantly trying to push yourself. That's just how you improve. Yeah,
I mean, it's like Brady, right? Which he's kind of the supreme example these days. But, for a guy that's past what most people, like the average in the NFL is like, what, 4 years? He's in his 21st, second year of playing. He signed for another, like in that, right? It's, can he be better than he was last year? And it's a continued improvement on his march, right? He's not, he wants to win, but it's also a win against himself, right? And what he did, and can he continue to improve and get better? And that's a very different mindset than to beat the competition, because now you're playing their game, versus can you beat what you did yesterday?
Yeah, and Brady's a great example. Also because I went to school with him, but we don't have to go there. But he, to have that mentality of constantly pushing yourself to be better. You don't get much better than that. That's where we all can improve, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, Zach gave just such a great, example of that, to building his team again in a super niche, to bringing people into the industry, which is what we all want, right? We want a growth. We want to bring people into construction, show how great of an industry this is, and that you can fit really anywhere, which I think Andy Zeller did a great job in, letting people know that, hey, you can come in here, right? Like, I work for trades, but I do stuff on the computer. So, and all, like, right, that's probably not talked about enough, that, hey, I work in a specialty subcontractor, do, mechanical, and yet I don't bend sheet metal.
Yeah. And he was a very good example of that. We've talked about that a lot too, about the various roles and opportunities in the construction industry. It's not just, a guy with pouches on banging hammers, or the architect, drawing buildings. There's everything you can imagine you can find in this industry. And, Andy had a great point. He brought up, one of the topics he brought up was his perfect BIM guy, I think he called him, was like a 50-year-old veteran, 50-year-old, tin knocker, who's been doing it his whole life, who's been on hundreds, if not thousands of jobs, and knows all the shit that goes wrong, and knows how a good job operates. So to have that mentality, to find those guys who maybe they're done, banging tin and bending duct, maybe now we can bring them back in and repurpose them, for lack of a better term, put them in the office and see what they can do, and on helping guys like Andy, who are trying to solve problems before they start. He also had the, and I'm going to butcher this, I meant to write it down, but the 5, 10, 50 rule, I think, something along those lines, where, if you screw up in the beginning, you can fix it for pretty low cost, $5. If it makes it to the field, it's a little bit more, but then if it gets into, already installed and now you're trying to fix it, it becomes a huge thing. So it just goes back to that constant leadership, that constant improvement attitude. And if you can get guys who have spent a good chunk of their career in the field doing it, those are great guys to lead you and your company forward in a different role.
And it's to keep those guys in the workforce, right? At the end of the day, it's to allow them to have longevity in a career and to continue to provide value. If you meet, I don't know a single guy that's been in the industry for a long time that I've met who didn't want to teach, right, or help the next person down the line, right? They might be crusty on the outside, but they want to teach people how to do it right, because they care. And if you've made it 30 years in construction, you kind of want to pass on what you've done, because your time being in the field is coming to an end. But you don't want the craftsmanship, the things that you've learned, to go to waste. So bringing those guys into the office, into, project management, superintendent role, but not everybody fits, leadership, but they can basically still be a fabricator, still install stuff, just do it on a computer, where they're not, breaking their back or getting up on a lift or anything like that, but they know how it's supposed to go. They know the sizes, they know spatially what needs to happen. And that becomes a great opportunity to repurpose, retrain your guys that still want to be a part of the company. They still want to work. They want to show up at 7, right, or earlier, and they want to contribute. And we, as owners, as leaders within the industry, we have to find ways to help those people to continue to provide value across the entire industry.
Yeah. And when you had your conversation with Nick Carrillo, when my pipes were frozen and I couldn't make it, that was a big topic there too, about, the industry advancing into more automated technology and things like robotics and along those lines. It's not geared to start wiping people out of these careers. You sent me a link last night, and it was essentially the robot that was putting together structural wood framing or something along those lines. That's not going to eliminate jobs. It's going to stir things up a bit, and jobs are going to have to be changed, and humans are still going to be needed, but we all have to be flexible in that role too. And, sometimes it just makes sense to retrain or to pivot and flex other skills that maybe you didn't even know you had?
It's really to continue to use the knowledge that people have gained in their experience and put it to work in different areas, right? If you're a good framer, maybe you're now working with the people that build the robots to figure out how to put them together, right? And there's always going to be nuances, and you're expert at that to help these programmers to make sure the robot does it correctly. And I mean, that's going to take a while. It's not a simple thing to do. Granted, it ultimately gets figured out, but at the same time, like, you're always going to need somebody to do like trim work, right? Or for the next whatever 10 years, right? You're going to need somebody to do the fine carpentry. You're going to need somebody to like install it and do QC to make sure that the robot did their job right for people that have done this for a long period of time. And it's ultimately, again, we have a labor problem. The only way to get out of this is through automation, because buildings are still getting built, no matter what the news might say. We're still moving forward on like a lot of construction. So in some places like New York City, $17 billion, that's with a B, got taken out last year in construction. It's a big number. But generally in a normal year, commercial construction is $800 billion, right? 800 billion is what commercial construction in the US alone. So when you look at how big of an economy this is, how many people it takes to build 800 billion worth of stuff, logistics and warehousing and, electricians, you name it, we don't have enough skilled tradesmen to get those projects done without being super over budget or super over time, purely because it's either going to cost you more to get the people you need to do it on time, or your schedule extends out because you can't find the people to do it. Right? It's a very simple equation. But in that, so you have now the only way to realistically meet budget and schedule, right? The two things that anybody cares about is you've got to find tools to do that, right? Whether that's in design tools to help you go faster, whether that's in assisted robotics to help you go faster, whether that's using like Spot, like Nick and I talked about, for them to do job site walks, right? Where your project engineer doesn't have to walk the job site. The dog goes and does it. And now the project engineer can deal with actual problems, not spend 3 hours walking around for no good reason. It's things like that to, again, focus on results, not the time it takes to do something.
I still want to get one of those dogs, just for the record.
I think they're like 60 grand if you can get them. I don't know what their back order is, but
I'm not sure what I would do with it. I might just have it follow me around until I figured something out, but there's got to be something out there. At least boost job site morale, right? When I show up with my robotic dog, and
that's the primary thing that they actually use them for, man, is site walks. So it has a prescribed path that it goes through every day. You got cameras mounted to it, and it just does instead of a person going and doing like your cameras or you're taking pictures or whatever, it's just got a like 360 camera mounted to it, and the dog just goes and walks and does the site walk and captures all that stuff. Now you need like a 100 terabyte drive to store all that stuff, but storage is cheap. But that's the primary use case for like a Spot. You can do it with drones too, but
right,
you're taking people out at the knees versus hitting them in the head.
Speaking of drones, we have a great drone guy that we started using on this last project. He'll come and he flies around. He's got more drones than I can even count. But that's been the biggest problem with it, is you mentioned the storage. He'll go out and he'll fly for half a day or something and send me a Dropbox link, and I've got more data than I literally know even what to do with. And we use it more as marketing fodder than anything else. We're not really doing inspections with it yet. We're not on that level or infrastructure. But yeah, it's just an astronomical amount of data and size that these files are coming in across.
Yeah, and I mean we touched on this with James and Andy too. Is we have and we create so much data, but at the end of the day, we have to find use cases for it. And in some of this, for exactly like you're talking about, it's you have to have a plan, right? So for hospitals, I totally see using total stations to do scans throughout the project, to know where all your grid is, to punch a floor box through on the project, let alone the future, to know where stuff is in the walls, to know where med gases are, to know where all the shutoff valves are, like all that stuff, especially in a hospital ceiling when you got 4 feet of plenum space. You kind of need to know what's up there before you crack it. On a future renovation, and hospitals get renovated all the time. So that information is super valuable. But then let's flip that to like a school, right? How often are you gutting walls in a school, right? Like you're not. If anything, the renovations are paint, it's finishes, right? You're redoing the floors, you're redoing the paint color, touching up, whatever, replacing a light. So it's a 1-for-1. You're not ever gut or tearing down a wall, or very rarely do you do that. So does it make sense to do laser scanning? And most schools are single story slab on grade. Like, do you really need to do a laser scan and know where the rebar is in the concrete? No. Like all that type of stuff. Like, do you really need this on a project? Because you're never going to renovate it. And to understand that going into the project, and this goes to an education of owners, which we haven't necessarily gotten into. I mean, we've touched on it, but this is what it comes down to. I mean, we talked about it with James. Like, what are you going to do with the data? And I think not enough. We have a standard. This is what we do. We use BIM. We laser scan stuff. We fly a drone. We whatever, and it looks cool. But in reality, is the owner ever going to use that for maintenance or for renovations or anything else moving forward? If the answer is no, maybe you relook at your deliverables for that project.
It just comes down to custom tailoring the solution to the need, right? My drone guy, I won't get into specifics of what he does now, but the company he works for, they'll go into large facilities that are under constant renovation like that, and they'll go and do the scanning and mapping and all that fun stuff. But there's a definite purpose there. There's a definite reason why they need, those owners need it. But you got to be able to custom tailor it, because it's so often that it just becomes the next shiny thing, and if you don't need the shiny thing, there's no sense in wasting anybody's time. We started the show talking about wasting time. That's a big one. And if you're going to spend the time and the money to go set up scanning or even modeling, I mean, to that degree, we had Doug Maiden on last week or 2 weeks ago from Beck Technology, and they have what they kind of affectionately touted as a dumbed down, BIM, and they sold it they sell it as a estimating product, a pre-con product, and it works pretty cool, but it's custom tailored. You're not going to have, at least back when I was looking at it, and this was 10 years ago, you're not going to have outputs of 3D realistic models. You get kind of block images and chunks of building, but it did what it was intended to do. And it's just that custom tailoring of the technology. We can all use it. We can all use it. We can all get better from it, from a small commercial construction company like me up to a Wallbridge or a Turner. It's just a different level of what we all need, but there's solutions out there. You got to be able to find them, and you got to be able to make sense of what you actually need versus what you don't.
And this is my get out the violin, pour yourself a glass of wine. This is a soapbox that I will stand on for a long time. And it's contracts, man. It comes down to contracts. Not enough people know what's in their contracts. They're not willing to enforce them until something goes wrong. They're not, like, an architect's never willing to go back for, hey, this is a scope change. This is extra design service. They're never willing to do that. And, for most of us, we don't go back to the contract. What do you actually need? Does this make sense for this project? Instead, it's here's our boilerplate thing. Good luck. We're going to do this and hopefully nothing goes wrong.
I would be lying if I said that we don't sometimes operate like that too, and you're right. We pull contracts back out. We look at them twice. Once when we write them, and then we only ever look at them again if shit goes south and there's a reason to then be really digging through them. And that's the time when you're like, oh man, I wish I had better defined X, Y, and Z for this trade or for this client or anything. But I think that's probably a topic that we should get into in full detail on a future show, because I know you're pretty passionate about it, and there's a lot out there to touch on in that regard.
Yeah, and again, it's making sure that everybody understands the deliverable, right? That everyone is on the same page, because a project manager doesn't know what's in the contract, can't enforce anything because they don't know, and likewise for others, it's just a hard thing. And then an owner isn't always informed of what they do, right? The lawyers are going through it, but a lawyer doesn't know what a BIM model is compared to the next guy, right? Like it's not the right people having the right conversations, and I think, with Tahir, we brought up a lot of this stuff is, there's ways to innovate and have those conversations. It's about our community. It's about the buildings we build, and innovation is in a lot of ways, shapes and forms, right? It doesn't have to be the newest software. Obviously that's what we build, but I'll tout it, right? We can help you, but at the same time, there's a lot of other things that you can do to improve your process, your community, right? This is, at the end of the day, y'all got to live together. Can you maintain those relationships?
Yeah. And she said it best though, too, on the flip side of that, you can do a lot to boost efficiency and to increase efficiency, but you can also efficiently suck. And, her point, I think anyways, was, you have to custom tailor. You have to make sure that the end result you're going for is really the product or the service or the offering that is needed, because you can spin a lot of wheels and waste a lot of time going after things that just maybe don't make sense. We're all up on innovation. That's great. We have to keep innovating, but you have to custom tailor it. You have to know who your audience is and what you're presenting. And every case is going to be different.
And that's just it. It's to be just specific, right? Not a wandering generality. And so often we overreact, right? This thing went wrong on this project. Now we're going to do this thing, right? Whatever it is, we're going to always require LOD 400, everything detailed to the last degree, because this thing got screwed up on this project this one time because, whatever happened. So then you overreact to the problem. So now you create a situation where you're doing a bunch of extra work that probably isn't needed because something went wrong one time. And it's never reimagined or relooked at, right? So there's a story of guy goes, marries into his family, and his wife always cuts the ends off the ham, and he's just like, why do we do this? And she's like, I don't know, my mom did it. Okay, well, she'll be here for Christmas. Let's ask her. Ask the mom. Oh, I did it because my mom did it. Well, all right. Well, grandma's going to be here in a few minutes, here for dinner for Christmas. We'll ask her when she gets here. All right, grandma, why did you cut the ends off the ham? Well, because great grandma did it. It's just the way it always has been. So the husband's like, what the heck? I gotta know why we cut the ends off the damn ham. So then he goes down to the nursing home where great grandma is and asks her, it takes a little while to figure out what he's asking. She was like, well, the ovens weren't big enough, so we had to cut the ends off the ham to get it to fit in the oven. So for 40 years, they've been wasting all this ham for something that, is now no longer a problem. And that happens all the time.
And it's kind of like a reverse mentorship, right? We talked with Luke Marcotte a lot about the importance of having mentors and passing down the good industry knowledge and the good successes that you want to carry on. But you gotta always ask the question, why are we cutting the ends off the ham? This doesn't make any sense.
Just cuz. But I mean, how often do you hear that answer?
Constantly. It's just the way we've always done it. It's the anti-innovation, the anti-100-to-0 mindset. It's everything, frankly, I hate about our industry is that, well, that's just how we've always done it. I struggle with this. I fight this every day. And it has permeated every facet, I think, of probably of most industries, but certainly of construction. It's just so easy to use that as your crutch.
The thing that I really want to do for those guys, especially so an easy trade would be like a carpenter, right? All right, I'm going to take your pneumatic nail gun. Here's a hammer. That's how they always did it.
Yeah. Problem solved, right? Learn real fast. That doesn't make any sense. Stop cutting the ham.
That's the point, right? It doesn't make any sense. And this is the thing, to reevaluate, on projects or quarterly, we finished Q1 21, right? Like we keep moving forward, whether we like it or not, right? The days keep counting down. So, you got to reassess, take a few hours, take a Friday afternoon, once a quarter, once a month, whatever, to reevaluate, are these things that we're doing correct? You don't have to go through the whole list, but pick a few. Are these right?
Yeah. Are they moving us in the right direction? Are they pushing us towards our overall definite purpose, our end goal? And if they're not, cut them off, change it. And it's kind of like the overarching theme of the show we do, right? Is that there's so much that can be changed for the better. There's a lot of good that needs to stay. Don't get me wrong. But if we all are really honest with ourselves and we're honest with our goals and we're honest with our businesses and our clients and trade partners and designers and everyone, there's a lot that can be fixed. And if we start fixing these problems that we talk about constantly, then the industry as a whole is fixed, or it's getting closer to being fixed. And the more we can do to push that boundary, the better off we're all going to be in the future.
And it's tackling one specific problem at a time. It's not a wandering generality of like the industry's broken, right? It's okay, labor is hard to find. Okay, what's the problem in attracting labor? Oh, we don't have any core values or stand for anything, or we don't, market construction as a good industry to get into, all the way, to the Little League game that we go to or the AAU basketball, that we're involved in, right? We don't talk up construction as an industry for people to come into. Okay, like let's start there. Let's implement core values. Let's talk up the industry that we're in. Let's, hey, this basketball gym was built by, your uncle or Bob or me, whatever that is, right? And to talk that type of stuff up. But it's okay, we have a labor problem. How do we solve it? Granted, it's not going to get solved overnight, but if you don't start talking about it today, it's going to be worse in 5 years. So it's to, get that kid that's on the cusp of making a decision of what they do, at 18 for the rest of their life, or a path that they start down. And, you can have a conversation and they can go left or right, and those are the conversations that we need to have. It's not an overnight fix, but it will help in the long run, right? And then that person's in there for 10, 15 years, has another conversation, just like Luke had, right? With guy that was a plumber and he wanted to live life like that guy. Same thing that every one of you needs to be having that conversation with somebody. And then you need to make, if you're an owner, if you're a manager, you need to make the experience of your people, which comes to core values, good. So they want to talk about it. So they want people to come in the industry. So we don't have a labor problem in 10 years.
Couldn't have said it better, man. Get specific and start having conversations and stop the generalities. Stop. You know what kills me? The worst answer when I ask somebody how they're doing. First of all, I don't ask that all the time. And when I do, I actually give a shit. I want an answer. But the guy that every single time says, living the dream, just living the dream, it makes my skin crawl.
And you know he's half lying, right? So I've gotten to where, depending on the day I've had, right, it's going good, getting better, right? Or it's been a crappy day, but we're getting through it, right? Is to be honest, to be real. And if it is like today, it's sunny and 70 degrees. I'm living in paradise, man. Like there's a point to some of that where, hey, living the dream, we're getting through a few things, but it's also, you got to sell that to yourself, right? So there's exactly that guy where he doesn't have anything good to do and it's total sarcasm. And then there's the people that are like, no, I really am living the dream and life is good. I can't ask for anything more, right? It's going great. But those people have a very different like attitude towards it. It's the sarcastic ones that you completely hate.
Yes, definitely.
But it comes, so I finished a good book and we'll kind of wrap it up here, but it's called Game of Work by Kuhnrant. So in the Game of Work, they talk about, he makes a ton of sports analogies. So in business, what score are you keeping, right? What's the score? We like to do that in terms of revenue, but should you really do it in terms of profit? In construction, should it be the amount of square foot that you do in a given year, right? Not project size, because cost is relative, right? Square footage is constant. So within a lot of this stuff, and when you get specific, score is specific, right? Like keeping score in basketball, 50 points is a low scoring game. 50 points in a soccer game, that's a lot, right? Like score is relative to the game that you're playing. And we all have to, if you shoot 50 in golf, you're a miracle, like that's crazy. So score is always relative to the game you're playing, but how do you keep score is something that each firm needs to determine for themselves so that you can get specific and then have a real conversation around that metric, that score. And then it's a specific thing. Hey, we didn't produce X amount of square feet today or linear feet, or, we didn't get X percent complete on these projects today.
Yeah. Another good book that touches on that a lot is Traction by Gino Wickman. The whole EOS mentality. They're real big on scorecards and scoring, multiple facets of yourself and your business. And it goes along, I think, with what we've been talking about just getting specific and having the difficult conversations. It's not an easy conversation to have all the time when say, all right, well, we didn't meet our quarterly goals. Here it is April 1st and, Q1 is done. We didn't meet it. Why? Let's sit down. Let's rip the damn Band-Aids off and let it bleed a little bit. And that's how we fix problems. That's how we grow. That's how we move forward. It's easier said than done for some, but I think it's necessary.
Totally, man. It's the more specific you can be, the more problems you can solve. And again, one at a time. You're not trying to fix everything in a day, right? You're trying to go one step at a time, one improvement. And I mean, ultimately that's innovation, right? That's how you get better. That's how you improve, is one day at a time, one step at a time, one specific problem at a time. And the more you can do that, I think the faster you're going to grow, get better, and just have a better life, right? At the end of the day, that's what we all want. It's a better life, live happier, healthier. And when you solve specific problems, you know that it's specifically taken care of.
Absolutely.
With that, man, any final words for this kind of wrap up episode?
I'm going to say thank you, Dillon, for bringing me on board to this wonderful podcast. It's been it's crazy that we've been through a whole quarter doing it now. I'm looking forward to Q2 and beyond. And anybody out there listening, give us a share, give us a rating. We need to start pushing this around a little more, and anything you guys can do to help, that's our fee. We're not charging you money to listen. We're not running ads. Just help us spread the word, help us spread the podcast around. And if you have any ideas for topics, you can reach out to either one of us pretty easily.
Absolutely, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, Matt and I both want to help the industry, right? So if you're in construction, if you're looking to get anybody into construction, I think we do a really good job for sure at the beginning of the industry, right? And getting people in, but also for those of you guys that have been in the industry for a while, to touch on specific problems that we have in construction and provide solutions for it. It's up to you guys whether you want to take action or not, to whether you actually want to fix these, but we're here to help have that conversation and again, you can submit topics. We'll talk about them, and then you can just share the episode to your boss or whatever. And we'll have the hard conversation that you might not want to have. So we'll do it for you. So just share this around. And again, we're here to help. We're here to, make construction an industry that people want to come into, and really to talk up the lovely industry that is construction.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to doing more.
For sure. Yeah, man. I'm glad you're here. Glad you're on. It's good having a co-host to bounce things off of. And again, to bring another perspective to the industry, not just mine, to bring another side of it, and, to show everybody that design and construction can work together. All right, guys, that's the show. Give us a share, and we'll see you here next week.